Good evening and welcome to One-on-One Nightly. I'm Chris Bocci with Tom Quigley, and we are happy to join you for our midweek one-on-one session as we take you to our Saturday show, our 4-hour Saturday show. But this is Wednesday night. We're in the middle of the week, and we have a World Series champion to report for you. That is the Los Angeles Dodgers. They win the championship for the first time since 1988. This Dodgers team just stacked all the way top and down. They won the World Series last night 3-1, and we're here to break it all down for you. Talk baseball. We'll have Mets and Yankees a little bit later in the show. NFL at the end. We'll take you to 10:30, but good to be with everybody at 9 o'clock, right, Tom?
Yep, it's great to be here. First time, and I'm ready to go.
So, these Dodgers, this was the team to beat. It was Dodgers and Yankees at the beginning of the year. We're talking about it's got to be their year, got to win, and probably equal pressure. But I wouldn't say equal, actually. Let me amend that. This is more pressure on a Dodgers team that has been to the Fall Classic twice in the last 3 years. This year, they finally get it done in 6 games. And where to begin but Blake Snell. And there are other points here, by the way. Justin Turner is one of them. And before we move to that, I'd rather talk about the game because, frankly, it just feels like something that we'd prefer to talk about. Although the Justin Turner conversation is certainly interesting. Blake Snell gets removed from this game after 5 1/3 and 73 pitches. And Kevin Cash yanks him, takes the ball from him. Your response?
Well, it's what everybody's talking about. It's it was the blunder of the night. Kevin Cash kind of going with the analytic approach, yanking his best player, his best pitcher, after 73 pitches while he was dealing. Tim Kirchin mentioned it last night after the game. It was only one hard hit ball that he gave up in his entire performance last night. So I don't know how you, just from the eye test, you see a guy absolutely dealing on the mound, hasn't given up a run, and you yank him in the World Series, Game 6. It's an elimination game. It's hard to rationalize outside of the analytic approach that, the Rays have used, and it's gotten them here. It's gotten them to the World Series, but it definitely came back to bite them. And Kevin Cash is now kind of on the hot seat in the Twitterverse, not necessarily actually in his position, but.
Well, it's tough. You win an American League pennant, it's tough to put somebody on the hot seat. But
certainly.
This is there are no words for this. I've been thinking about this all day. And if I'm a Rays fan, I can't even imagine. Part of you as a Rays fan has got to be comfortable with analytics because it's what's taken a team that I think is 28th or 29th at payroll to this point. So look, analytics, I'll be the first to praise them, but this is not an analytics conversation. Let's really dispel with that, and let's not make this something about that. The criticism of this is inherently criticism of an analytics focused approach. No, because analytics is about logic, and this is illogical. This is illogical that you're taking your ace out of the game. There is no justification. I understand third time through the lineup. That's what this is based on. There's wonderful statistics that back up the idea. I get that. But this is the World Series. This is game 6 of the World Series. This is not analytics because that only takes you so far. You know, you want to talk about a 60 game group of a 60 game season, 162 game season. If you consistently make choices based on analytics, yes, you will have better outcomes on the whole. But the playoffs are a different animal. The World Series is a different animal. Your ace is a different animal. You make decisions based on analytics only to the extent that is I don't. At a certain point, emotion is something that is not a bad thing to use in the logical decision-making process. I have to believe that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason they play the game. If it was all, analytics, it would be no fun. It wouldn't be played out. And that's why, as much as statisticians have kind of, begun to run the entire baseball world, scouting, it's kind of a huge, more so than any other, sports league out there. Experience is still what won the day here. And I mean, you have a manager on the other side who's been to this stage 3 times. This is his 3rd time. And I think that also might have been, a factor in Cash's decision. This is his 1st time. So he's going to go with what he knows. And here, it's just not the move. You saw Mookie Betts and Dave Robinson literally exchanged a smile after they saw Kevin Cash come out of the dugout to take out Snell. You could just tell from there. It was foreshadowing. This was about to turn. And the announcers were stunned. Everyone was stunned. I don't think anybody in the building expected that. And Blake Snell was rightfully extremely upset. I mean, he had a good interview after the game. He didn't criticize his coach, but he definitely, as one would be, seemed extremely heartbroken. And he's a guy that knows that he can get out of that situation. He puts one guy on base and he's yanked. It's the shortest leash of all time. And there's really no excuse.
You know what? It draws a very interesting contrast. I mean, I'm just thinking of this game 5 of the World Series 2015, the Mets and Royals at Citi Field. Matt Harvey fights for a 9th inning. Just passionately fights for a 9th inning after he delivered 8 shutout innings. And Terry Collins gave him the ball after he had made up his mind he was going to go to the closer, Familia. That was when emotion corrupted a decision. And when after 8 innings, it actually was really wise to say, he gave us 8 scoreless innings. Let me give the ball to my closer. This was a different thing. I can't get over the fact that Blake Snell was at 73 pitches. I mean, 70 pitches. That could you imagine telling this to somebody who played the game? I imagine, I mean, John Smoltz calling the game. I can't remember what he said, but how do you look at that as the pitcher that he is, the pitcher that, all of these greats are, and say, could you imagine if my manager took me out at that pitch count in that spot? These guys wouldn't hand over the ball. So almost a credit to Blake Snell for that. But on the analytics thing, the other side to the coin, I guess, is that this is something that the Rays maybe aren't here without, and understand they revolutionized the game of baseball. And I think for the better of the game. I'm not here to criticize analytics. I really don't think that's what this is. I think there's no defense. There's no defending the indefensible here. I'll give you the last word on the Snell conversation because I don't know what more there is.
I mean, there was the one other argument, and it's a bad argument, is that maybe you save him for a possible game 7, but you can't get to game 7 unless you win game 6. So I don't think that's a good argument.
Hey, guys. Yeah, I mean, you saw the game 5 and then the game 7 with Bumgarner, but I don't think anybody's ever pitched 5 innings and then pitched the next day. I mean, that, and as you mentioned, it's a moot point. It's irrelevant. You're playing for your life. You cannot think about tomorrow. So this is a Tampa Bay Rays team that, all that being said, an incredible accomplishment for what they did. And what they were able to build with what they have. And the polar opposite team is a Los Angeles Dodgers team that spends more money than anybody next to the Yankees. And they finally get their ring. You know, they've been here now twice out of the last 3 years, or now twice in the last 3 years before this year. This is the third time. And I like Dave Roberts a lot. I like Clayton Kershaw a lot. I'm happy that he finally got his ring. This is a team that oddly has a New York connection in the Brooklyn Dodgers, in Vince Scully, the Fordham alumnus. I'm happy for him. I am happy for the city of Los Angeles to get their NBA championship. Now they had a World Series ring. This is a team that hasn't won since 1988. So kudos to them for that. Just star-studded, absolutely star-studded, up and down. And Mookie Betts, it was that final piece. He was that final piece for them.
Yeah, I mean, with the Dodgers legacy, it's funny. When they were in Brooklyn, they were the team that just couldn't win, and
right.
they were there for 40 years before 1955. They get their first championship, and immediately they move out to LA, and they have success there early. And in the 60s they won a couple, and 80s won a couple, but it's been 32 years. That's quite a drought. I mean, it's nothing like the Cubs 108 or Sox 86 in 2004, but they really waited for one. And after, losing 2 straight, they said enough is enough. We're gonna have to build an absolute championship team, and they did it. They went out, they got Mookie Betts. Definitely won that trade. I'm, as a Red Sox fan, I was scratching my head on, why they would just give him away. But
lose a Hall of Famer there.
Exactly. But it showed. I mean, Mookie made a huge difference in the World Series. 2 home runs on the bases. His speed earned them 2 huge runs in the past 2 games. They were in this past game, and I think game 4. If they didn't have Mookie in game 6, he scores that run, barely, that go-ahead run in the 6th inning, and then hits an insurance shot in the 8th. He was huge. And that was basically what I think probably put them over. They also got David Price in that trade, and he did not even play it. He opted out for COVID, and they didn't need him. It was all Mookie. And
right.
That was huge. That was definitely, I think, what put them over and what finally allowed them to win.
That'd be interesting if David Price was a part of this team, because I think he could have actually had success, and we'll see. But obviously, it wasn't necessary. This is a stacked pitching staff. The team has everything. It's a complete baseball team, and that's what good teams do. When they were already complete, and they wanted something to throw them over the top. Don't even make it close. Make us, bar none, the best team in the National League. They did that. It wasn't even close. Yankees did the exact same thing with Garrett Cole, and they both have different outcomes this year. And I think that's why a lot of Yankee fans are upset, because they were very much as good. But I'm glad we got to see a Dodgers-Rays World Series, because it was an excellent World Series that took us 6 games. You had the game 4 walk-off Rays victory in a fashion that you've never seen before in a World Series. So this World Series brought us a lot, and certainly brought us the contrast of the team that built up from nothing versus the team that's had everything. They've been there. They've been trying to get one, and they finally get one for the first time in the 21st century. The other story here is Justin Turner, and unfortunately will sort of overshadow a lot of the good things that need to be said about the Dodgers right now, because this is the intrigue. Justin Turner gets an inconclusive COVID test before Game 6. Inconclusive. So he plays third base. Second inning, test comes back positive, another test. Okay. By the 8th inning, he's out of the game. Word gets to the dugout, he's not playing. Okay. Goes to the clubhouse, going to watch the game on TV. He's positive with the coronavirus. These are the protocols. Dodgers win the World Series. Justin Turner finds himself on the field, at times without a mask, and celebrating a World Series victory. So everybody in baseball talking about this, Major League Baseball, with a searing statement. Let me read that. Major League Baseball. This is what they're saying. Rob Manfred, MLB statement, and I'm quoting. Immediately upon receiving notice from the laboratory of a positive test, protocols were triggered, leading to the removal of Justin Turner from last night's game. Turner was placed into isolation for the safety of those around him. However, following the Dodgers' victory, it is clear that Turner chose to disregard the agreed-upon joint protocols and the instructions he was given regarding the safety and protection of others. While a desire to celebrate is understandable, Turner's decision to leave isolation and enter the field was wrong and put everyone he came into contact with at risk. When MLB security raised the matter of being on the field with Turner, he emphatically refused to comply. This is a strongly worded statement, Tom. I mean, tough on Turner, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, I think the MLB definitely wants to distance them from, Justin Turner's individual actions, which are terribly irresponsible. He knows that he is the virus. It's not just like all of the players are celebrating on the field and maybe they're not wearing masks for a picture. He knows to a certain extent, maybe it's a false positive, but that's unlikely given that he had an inconclusive test the day before. So with that knowledge, he goes onto the field where he could easily spread the virus to a number of his teammates, his coaches, families. There were countless family members of players, young children, parents, media personnel. It's kind of mind-boggling that, and it's like at the same time, he deserves to celebrate because he just won a championship. But you have to look at the big picture here. You're risking people's health and people's potentially lives by your selfishness to go onto the field and disregard that you have a potentially deadly virus and you are contagious. It's a really bad look, especially after, everything that everyone across the world has been through. Not being able to say goodbye to loved ones, missing important life events. Like people have had to sacrifice in order to, protect people from getting this virus that could potentially kill them or cause, lasting effects, like lasting health effects. So it's just really, it's kind of a terrible look for him as, a person. And it's definitely something that MLB should look into and potentially, punish him for at least. It's kind of essential.
Yep, and they are investigating, and I don't know why. To me, it speaks to something larger, which is an odd. Some people who are flippant about this disease, and that's really disappointing. It's disappointing when it comes from someone like a professional athlete. I've heard sort of the other side, and there really is no other side because it's just wrong on a very objective level. But people are empathizing with the grandness of this event, which is a World Series victory. True, that's a grand event. Unfortunately, unfortunately, it doesn't excuse it. You know, the youth of the athletes and their health is that they're probably in good shape with this virus. Also, not really relevant when you mentioned some of the other personnel who are around. The fact that these players are interacting with their families, the fact that there's media personnel, there's lots of people there for the World Series victory. The worst part to me is that he's not in a mask. That is I can't. If you know that you have, we wear the masks without thinking that we have the virus, and you wear the mask under the assumption that you may, but with the knowledge of it, makes it sort of a not even an ambiguous moral choice. But he was on the field to celebrate that moment. If there's any good news here, it's that Dodgers are reporting negative cases across the board, and they flew back to Los Angeles with the exception of Justin Turner. By the way, his tweet, I think, is worth mentioning as well. Let me find it here. It just stuns me. Here's his tweet. Thanks to everyone reaching out. I feel great. No symptoms at all. Just experienced every emotion you can possibly imagine. Okay. Can't believe I couldn't be out there to celebrate with my guys. So proud of this team and unbelievably happy for the city of Los Angeles, #World Series champs. A little bit bizarre to me because we all saw the photos of Justin Turner on the field without a mask, sitting next to his manager, who's fairly older. So the denial here, this appears to be a denial that happened. I don't think he's going to win that one.
Yeah, I mean, there are cameras. We have photos. We have photos of you next to your manager who literally just took you out of the game because of this positive diagnosis. So I question at least, I mean, players maybe, but at least some, like Dave Roberts, if you see this guy that you just took out from the game following, COVID guidelines, but you know that he probably has the virus and you're sitting there, neither of you wearing masks, just taking photos, smiling. I don't know. Obviously you're on a high. You just won your first World Series as a manager, but there's certainly a level of responsibility that he's lacking in that photo, in that situation. Someone should probably say something. Hey, you could be, exposing all of us to this. Please go back inside. I don't know. It's
mind-boggling. It is.
Yeah.
Well, so nothing more needs to be said. That's the story. We'll continue to keep our eye because an outbreak is possible. Who knows? There hasn't been one yet, which is very good news at this point because it's possible that would have already taken foot. Nothing yet. If there was a game 7, by the way, who knows what happens in that case? If the entire team needs to self-isolate, I have no idea, but we don't have to have that conversation. The Dodgers are World Series champions. That we'll put a bow on it. They win in 6 games. They won 3-1 last night. Incredible job by them. The Justin Turner conversation is certainly an interesting one. We'll carry baseball into our next segment here. Talk about what was an unprecedented and really an incredible 2020 season, one we will never forget. The 60-game season. We'll always talk about it. So we'll join you after a quick break. For Tom Quigley, I'm Chris Baccia. You're listening to One on One Nightly. Welcome back to One on One Nightly. I'm Chris Bocci with Tom Quigley with you here on Wednesday evening. It is 9:24 p.m. Here on Twitter, on YouTube. Please hit us with your questions or comments on both platforms. We're talking about the World Series. Dodgers are World Series champions. After 6 games, they win 3-1 last night. Let's talk about last night's game because we neglected to in the interest of talking about Justin Turner and everything to unpack there. We hit on Mookie Betts and what he meant to this team all year long, but last night again, steals 2 bases, 2 for 4, 2 runs, run batted in, and of course the home run. Mookie Betts, an incredible start to his Dodgers career.
Yeah, I think this is completely what they expected out of him when they made the blockbuster deal of the offseason. He went out there and he showed that he's a champion. He was, one of the only one on the roster that has a ring. And he went out there and he earned it. He had a lot of help. Corey Seager, the MVP, had a very great postseason. He was the MVP of the NLCS as well. He batted .400 in the World Series, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. He was Mr. Everywhere. And same with Justin Turner. I will give him credit for his on-field play. Yeah, another 2 dingers. He had 4 doubles, which is quite a stat for 6-game series. And
he's unbelievable.
Yeah, and so the bats came alive when they needed to, and last night they definitely benefited from the quick leash on Snell, but they definitely made them pay with Mookie's double, and then later Mookie's homer in the 8th. So they made it count when it mattered, and Mookie was a huge part of that.
This has been a team in the works for so long that it really does feel right that they get a World Series because we've watched them here. We've watched them win the National League West, and they're just purely on paper the best team in baseball. And some would contend the Yankees, but just the depth of this team is the craziest thing. Julio Urias closes it down, pitches 2 1/3, doesn't even let up a hit. Perfect. 2 1/3, perfect innings to end this game. Not Kenley Jansen, who appeared to be vulnerable. This was a team that could always fall back on somebody else when they needed to. That's the thing about them. Austin Barnes behind the plate. And Justin Turner, let me say this about him, not in the context of what we've just discussed. This guy is about the clutchest guy in baseball. I mean, next to Seager and Betts, of course. But I remember watching him in the playoffs against the Mets. He was the guy that you were afraid of in that Dodger lineup, even back in 2015 when the Mets were able to beat them and they weren't as good. But the fact that he was a New York Met and the Mets designated him for assignment, I believe it was, or optioned him, let him walk, that stings maybe more than anything. I mean, that just hurts.
Yeah, he's kind of been I think one Dodgers official in response to his whole, joining the celebration after his positive COVID test. A Dodger official said that he's the part of this team, and
right.
That's a fair argument. He's been on all 3 of their World Series rosters, and he's experienced heartbreak at the hands of a team that a lot of people like to put an asterisk next to, the Astros of 2017, and then another trip in 2018. But he's always there in the playoffs. He always turns it on, and it was no different in this series. It's kind of it's unfortunate. He had a fantastic display of athletic ability, and he's now in the headlines for completely different and frankly selfish reason. So it's an unfortunate cloud to have over him, but a great performance once again.
and a bit of a cloud over the entire World Series conversation, and because this is a story that is going to catch more eyes of people who aren't even fans of baseball. But I think about the people who rightfully, I would be one of them, to put an asterisk on the Astros World Series, the baseball traditionalists who have got to be the loudest people in the room right now about Blake Snell getting yanked from last night's game. I mean, I was alluding to it before. It's just, there is an era of baseball. I think about people of a generation above us, because I understand it. I can wrap my head around why, because there are numbers that would say you have to pull this guy third time through the lineup, lets up a hit, that's it. But I just, this is the thing that stings about this loss, is that Tampa Bay could have got a seventh game out of this series. And I don't know that they win a seventh game. Not at all do I know that. But we'd have it on right now simultaneously with our one-on-one, because I think if Blake Snell stays in that game, he may give you 8, he could give you 9. He's on pace. If you're in the 6th inning with 70 pitches, you're in good shape. So I can't get my mind off that.
He was untouchable last night. He was really just untouchable. And the relief of all of the Dodgers hitters, I think Corey Seager was 0 for 2. Mookie was 0 for 2 at that point.
Right.
They were so just overwhelmed with glee, because now they're going to see a pitcher that just doesn't have the same stuff. And, he was phenomenal last night. The slider was working. He was untouchable. And it's just really a shame. I feel bad. I feel worst for him out of anyone on that Rays roster, because he, put his heart and soul into this game and kind of just was wronged by his manager.
And we'll never know. We'll never know what happens because the choice was made and Nick Anderson replaces him. And this is crazy to me, because Nick Anderson has allowed a run in each of his last 7 appearances in the playoffs. I mean, and by the way, longest streak by reliever in MLB history. So not even like the next man up is anything close to a Blake Snell. But it just stuns me. Let's move to postseason as a whole, baseball season as a whole, because this really was an accomplishment last night. It actually felt like an accomplishment to me that Major League Baseball was able to culminate a season that we didn't know if they would be able to finish. I think I had said in the summer that baseball staying on, it was really, morale-wise important for the country, important for fans of baseball to be able to turn on a game. Absolutely was the case this season. We got to watch baseball. There were no fans in the seats until the end there at the postseason in the bubble, where you had a little bit of real noise at least. So was it weird? Yeah. Did it feel a little odd? Yeah. But these are legitimate World Series champions in the Los Angeles Dodgers. Don't think you can take that away from them. Don't think you can take away the Game 6 victory based on a poor managerial choice. That's part of the game. And perhaps Kevin Cash would have been praised if his combination of Blake Snell plus whatever relievers came in, were able to shut it down, and Rays were able to win that game 1-0. Yeah, then he would have looked like a genius. Bad call, doesn't take it away from them. But also on the broader level, fact that this was a 60-game season and a quick sprint, don't take it away from the Dodgers either. They won 47 games. They were the best team in baseball, hands down.
Yeah, a lot of people, I don't hear a lot of people that agree with the whole asterisk around this season, because, everyone was playing under the same rules. In fact, I kind of dislike that it's even a question that we're asking,
Right.
Everyone is under the same circumstances, it's different from, obviously it's extremely different from an Astros team that has a competitive advantage over everyone. It's not the season.
Not comparable. No.
The 2011 NBA lockout, I don't think anybody really discounts the championship that the Heat won in 2012 because of that lockout. You know, it was a shortened season, but you never hear about that. And I don't think that you'll necessarily hear about that much longer after maybe a few weeks from now, hopefully, because, you know, it was all fair. There were hiccups along the way. There were definitely some teams that suffered from the, you know, the diagnosis of COVID, like the Marlins at first, kind of were the first outbreak, and you know, the Indians have had a few, but it was just, in the end, it was mostly a success, and it's definitely admirable considering that the MLB was up first. They had the task of setting the example for a full season. Now the NHL and NBA kind of lucked out from only having to do, you know, a postseason, and the MLB, you know, they did what they could, and other than this very noticeable black eye at the end, it went off as good as you might have expected. So props to the MLB for that.
And there's something symbolic here that this was the end of the season, because this moment says so much about 2020. It's like a microcosm, because you just have you do have the accomplishment of a World Series, but they didn't give us a chance to forget about coronavirus when the World Series was happening. When there was a celebration, you had this moment where, yes, you're watching a baseball game, but don't forget it's still 2020. There's still a pandemic. Let it be known, because here's somebody with the infectious disease on the field taking photos with the team. So sort of just an odd juxtaposition of the world that we're living in, which is like this resumption of normality, but there's a parallel track, which is this virus that has followed us, will follow us, will continue to exist with us, and of which we must be cautious. The other thing is Rob Manfred, who became a real talking point this season, and for good reason. And talking about the baseball traditionalist on analytics, on other things. Real baseball fans do not like Rob Manfred. Got booed last night, awarding the Commissioner's Trophy to the Dodgers. And by the way, their new ownership group, relatively new ownership group that gets their first World Series. My take here is, and maybe this is unpopular, but I actually feel a little bit of sympathy for Rob Manfred. When they boo Roger Goodell for whatever reason, I enjoy that. I join along from home, but I don't know. It felt odd on a World Series podium like that. It didn't feel like a moment to boo for me.
Yeah, I do remember having similar thoughts at first, mostly just because of his reaction to it. He did not really take it like a champ. He kind of.
I felt bad. I really felt bad.
There was a huge pause there where he kind of just was like letting the booze come down on him, and he looked very rattled. But you know, they're well deserved. They're well deserved. Let's be honest. I mean, the Astros got off so easily. The NCAA stripped the 2013 Louisville Cardinals of their NCAA championship. That's what needed to happen in this situation. And it makes it so much worse that after complete inaction not complete inaction, but for the most part, like inconsequential punishments, Rob Manfred calls the Commissioner's Trophy a piece of metal. So I thought when I remembered that, I was like, you know what, this guy completely deserves it. And it's funny because like I also definitely am okay with and never feel bad for Roger Goodell when he's getting booed. And I think he's made similar mistakes, not necessarily like in the same vein or category, but he's definitely had his, shortcomings as a commissioner of a major sports league. But it's definitely, I don't know. If you're a commissioner, you're never going to have, I take that back actually. Adam Silver is very well liked. So, but I think just the job itself definitely carries with it, a certain dislikability, regardless of what you do. You're always going to make people upset. And and he was in a stadium of mostly Dodgers fans, so that also probably contributed to it.
Right.
But yeah,
But
it's definitely
if you're a Dodger,
it's definitely
if you're a Dodger fan, you hate the guy. I
exactly.
think I certainly would. But another thing that baseball fans will rip him for is his handling of the union this summer, and the fact that MLB managed 60 games. Where we are now, it's hard to criticize because we made it. We got the World Series. There is a legitimate World Series winner that no one can dispute. And by the way, I'm almost glad that a good team, the best team like the Dodgers, won, because if you had a team, sneak its way to a World Series victory, although it wouldn't be the case for the Rays, perhaps that would have been an area where people would have said, oh, is that a legitimate champion? But we don't have to deal with that because this was a team that had World Series written all over it before the year. But it is true that Major League Baseball should have gotten more than 60 games in here. I mean, they really let the earliest months, which were actually the safest months in the summer, when cases were at their lowest, when the temperature was at its hottest. But I don't really know that there's room to get into that, because they were able to pull it off. And you're right to mention that they were the first, and they have they had the difficult circumstance of already being in a war with their players union. So the timing was really tough for them. They were able to get the year done. It's water under the bridge. Rob Manfred, very much not liked. And I agree with you. The thing that made me uncomfortable was he almost seemed like he wasn't expecting to be booed. And maybe I don't know that I would be either, but somebody should have probably told him, look, they might boo you. Just be ready for that, because it was actually a bit sad to watch him really appear upset. He really appeared upset. Roger Goodell, he knows the drill. He comes out, the first pick in the NFL draft, and it's raining down. It's become sort of a comical exercise.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's another thing that we learned from this MLB season is that owners and players do not have a very friendly relationship.
Right.
And I think a lot of times this summer, when they're going back and forth with their proposals and their declining of the proposals, at times I did feel for Manfred, because I felt he's kind of in the middle here, trying to get both sides
right
come to an agreement. But at the same time, he definitely should have had more than 60 games. I think the season was supposed to start, or the season got postponed mid-March, in the middle of spring training. So of course that delayed the season. But I think by the time that we're in maybe August, that's a little late for a baseball season to start, especially when they probably had everything, all of the necessary testing and precautions. They could have had it earlier had there not been such a long dispute, full couple of months there. They were completely at odds, both sides, owners and players, and we were the ones who suffered from it because we got less baseball. But at the end of the day, a full season is not going to happen in a situation like this. And the fact that we were able to get a World Series champion and at least a decent sized regular season, I definitely think it was a success, a measured success for the MLB.
That's well said, a measured success. And no doubt that his role is sort of akin to almost a politician, where it's hard to be liked because he has to work on behalf of an ownership group that is motivated by profit. I mean, that's what they want to do. They don't want to cut the players the best deal for the players. That's not in their interest. And that's what he has to represent. It's not a fun thing to represent. And then, on the other side, I don't know that baseball fans direct ire at Rob Manfred because he doesn't well represent the interests of the players. But that's largely why you saw that, essentially what was a holdout. And the reason was because ownership hasn't treated the players union, the players very well. So that's something we're going to actually hear about more in this winter. And we will cover all of it here on WFUV. But right now, we'll leave it there on that segment, One-on-One Nightly. And we'll talk to you in a little bit, continue along with baseball. Welcome back to One-on-One Nightly. I'm Chris Bocci with Tom Quigley. We're talking baseball. We're talking World Series. The Dodgers are champions. They win 3-1 last night, and they win the series in 6 games. But, of course, lots surrounding that. The Justin Turner conversation that we all really just regret and wish didn't happen. The Blake Snell conversation, analytics, talking about it all for you. But live with you on Twitter and YouTube, let's turn over to this conversation about, or let's continue with Rob Manfred on this thought, because it occurred to both of us in our break that we didn't mention what I think is a key point on the Rob Manfred baseball philosophy, which is that he doesn't have one. He doesn't appear to be loyal to what this game is, because this season, for whatever reason, Major League Baseball, well, I know the reason. They instituted the rule, we run a runner on second in the beginning of the 10th inning, beginning of extra innings. You're going to have a runner on second. He'll count as an unearned run if he comes across, but that will accelerate extra innings. We don't want any games running long. This felt like, to me, a way for MLB to sort of force its agenda on this, because they had tried it, or at least I think they considered piloting it, but it was something that they had brought up earlier. They used the pandemic as an opportunity to say, we need this. I'm not sure how the pandemic and a runner on second are related, But in any case, they were able to push that, and they got it done. And the new thing is that Rob Manfred is open to keeping that going. And to continue with Rob Manfred and our criticism of him, I don't like that, and I think he should recant what he said.
Yeah, that is it's not a good rule. It's not a good rule.
No.
It's definitely a logical stretch to suggest that it helped, minimize player risk, other than the fact that it might shorten games and keep players off the field, which I guess I understand. But the bottom line is that's not baseball. You don't ever start an inning with a runner on base. The point of baseball is you have to get players on base and then move them over. So
Correct.
I don't know. It just seems very artificial. And if we're playing devil's advocate, I'm sure if you were talking to a baseball player in the 50s and you told them that there could be a player who would hit for your pitcher but not play the field, they would laugh in your face. So there are definitely some good things. I like the DH rule that come out of, artificial or like augmentation of the baseball rules, the traditional rules. I don't think this is one of them because it's so outlandish. It completely affects, the scoring of a game. And honestly, I definitely as much as like 18 inning games, and they're very rare, but sometimes they happen and they can be a slog. I personally kind of like them. I remember in World Series in 2018, game 3, Red Sox Dodgers, that was a very long game, went 18 innings. And we saw an incredible performance from Nate Eovaldi coming out of the pen and throwing 9 innings in relief. It was incredible, but he pitched very well. That's a moment he'll never forget. A lot of fans will never forget. And, extra innings it's an extremely intense and very integral part of baseball. So to change it in such ways, it's just very not baseball. It's very unbaseball. And it's very telling of, Rob Manfred and his, I guess, at times misguided, but also kind of maybe potentially beneficial ability to say, you know what, like screw the old heads. We're going to make baseball better. But I don't think this is making baseball better.
Well, I think I don't know how directed it is at making the game better because the game is perfect. This is baseball. This is America's pastime. It doesn't require betterment. This is just a purely financial interest. Can we? And I understand that baseball needs to be focused on that. It's a big part of the culture, but it's a decreasing part of the culture. We have NBA is taking many more eyes from baseball that baseball might have had, and especially young eyes, and that's important. And it needs to be talked about. How can we engage youth? Definitely one of the big factors. Make the game shorter, and I understand that. So you see things like limiting mound visits. That's good. Shorter breaks in between innings. That's good. That's good for everybody because nobody likes the commercials. So great. But you don't fundamentally change the game by putting a runner on second base at the start of extra innings. I mean, that's crap. That's not baseball. Designated hitter. I admit that I am in a minority of those who wish that it wouldn't be done away with because that wish that the pitcher hitting wouldn't be done away with because that and I don't necessarily have a good reason. I like that part of the game. I know it's kind of a tired argument, but I love seeing the pitcher hit and every once in a while do something. But I love the element of the bunt is something that is disappearing from the game of baseball, which I don't like. But young fans probably would rather see a designated hitter. So fine, I'll live with that. I'll allow it. But I can't allow this. And let me also say that Manfred is expressing an openness to an 18 playoff of each division, a 16-team playoff like we saw in the shortened season. And it made sense in the shortened season because it was such a sprint that it made sense. We don't want anybody to get cut short of the playoffs that really deserves a spot here. This cannot stand. This cannot stand for a 162 game season. This is when baseball becomes basketball and becomes hockey, and it isn't. It isn't those sports. I don't want to see that because the key to the beauty of the playoffs is that you've got to be good. You've got to be good. You've got to be great to get to the playoffs. You've got to be great. And, when you put 16 teams, there were teams that weren't great in the playoffs this year. And I have a big problem with that. And I really, really hope that doesn't stand.
It almost reared its ugly head this past postseason. If everyone outside of the Houston metropolitan area was rooting against the Astros in the playoffs, and it nearly became a Dodgers Astros World Series. And as much as that probably would have been fantastic for ratings, two teams that absolutely detest each other, it would have been bad for baseball. Because the Astros had a losing record. They're 29-31. A losing record team is not a good team, and they definitely shouldn't be awarded any shot at making, the most prestigious, situation, the highest honor of being the representative of your league. So I don't know that if we might be having a different conversation had the Astros made the World Series. Maybe Rob Manfred isn't as keen as keeping this playoff format. It certainly does. Yeah. I don't like 16 teams in the NHL and the NBA. It's too much. It's definitely not organic when more than 50% of your teams make it to the postseason. It should be something you have to work for. Otherwise, it kind of makes, regular season not really important. I mean, baseball and single regular season games, usually not that essential because there's a lot of them, 162. But in the NBA, the regular season really doesn't really matter. You pretty much know the playoff teams before the actual season culminates. So I don't know. I think it would only have a negative effect on the regular season, on the caliber of teams that are playing each other on the biggest stage, and all around just doesn't seem right. Now, on the contrary, I also see the point that, we started the World Series 30, 40 years ago. The only postseason was the World Series. You just won your league and you got there. And gradually the postseason has been expanding over time. And, the earliest I can remember is just the 8-team playoff with a wild card. Now we have a wild card game. And I don't mind that. I think that's cool. Just a 1-game do or die. But I definitely don't think anything more than 10 is necessary or wanted by fans.
It's not. Look, I don't want to see, like, if the Mets were in the playoffs as an 8 seed this year, I would have welcomed that. But I don't want 16 teams to get in just for the Mets still can't even get it, even with 16 teams. It's embarrassing. But I don't want the spot. Don't give me the spot. We didn't earn the spot. Don't go in. Don't do it. It isn't right. You win the division, you get in. One of the top 2 teams that didn't win their division, you get in. That's it. Leave it there. I understand that wasn't always the case. It was expanded, and that's probably where at the time the opponents of a second wild card said this is a slippery slope. We're going to become like the NBA one day. But I just don't like the premise that you just have to not be bad in order to be a playoff team. But let's turn the page on the conversation about baseball, the future of baseball, and how we need to keep it pure, because that's important. It is the pastime. And let's talk about Steve Cohen and the New York Mets, because Steve Cohen appears poised to be the next owner of the New York Mets, and this is very welcome news. He would become the richest owner in all of sports, bar none, by far. But there's a little bit of a holdup here, and we don't anticipate this to actually hold up his ownership of the Mets, but it could provide for some ruffles. You heard some rumblings that Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, was thinking about holding this up. By the way, he has the authority to do that. That comes from rules that say the mayor, the New York City Um, if this is a stadium in New York City, which of course Queens is, the mayor can prohibit a person who is convicted of a federal crime. And by the way, this is sort of contested because Steve Cohen himself is not a convicted felon, but his company is. Insider trading paid 1.8 billion dollars. Just handed it over to the SEC, I believe it is, which is an insane amount of money to just give up like a parking ticket. But that happened. It's possible that it's running into a hitch. We don't know if it is. He's going to get approved by the owners on Friday. And in all likelihood, this will pass over. But it is now a real story that the New York Post is reporting, whereas it was just a rumor. It's now a real thing that de Blasio has concerns about a potential Steve Cohen ownership.
Mm-hmm. I think this, as much as it is a story now, it might not be a story until we hear the no from de Blasio, because people still believe that it will go off, without a hitch. It will go through. But yeah, I mean, he will have to deal with a very angry city population. Not that he already isn't a very unpopular person in New York. He is also facing, even more divisiveness when half the city's favorite team is finally going to get the owner they've kind of spent the entire year just overjoyed over, a new face to lead the Mets out of their very poor situation. And it could end up, if it's delayed at all, it could actually seriously, cause some problems. So that's if, there are some reservations. But if there are reservations, if there's any sort of, hiccup that takes time, free agency starts in a few days, and that's going to hold up free agency. You're not going to be able to attract new free agents if you're still, arguing over who owns the team. So it's kind of essential. If you're a Mets fan, it's kind of essential for this deal to go through. And I expect it will. But then again, I don't know what I'm talking about. It sounds like big business stuff that is over my head. But if it goes off without a hitch, it's not a story. If it does, there are serious consequences for Mets.
Serious consequences. And I am one of those Mets fans, and I'm not really too worried because I'm not totally buying that this is real. Not that this isn't real. I understand that the mayor has reservations, but I just can't imagine he steers this situation that really I wouldn't think would affect City Hall. It is sort of odd in his coronavirus briefings that he's getting this question at the end. I actually saw it. It's like sort of odd. It's like the city has some other things going on right now, including outbreaks in Brooklyn and Queens. And there's this question about the Mets ownership change. And, I won't criticize him because nothing has happened yet. But it anyways makes for interesting conversation, and it would only find the Mets. Something like this would only find us. There's something incredible in the mystique around the New York Mets and how trouble just finds them. Bizarre things just find them. When there's finally a light out of the end of the tunnel, and I've been really, really clear about this, that the firing of general managers, which we've seen, the firing of managers, none of this matters. This shifting and this changing, it doesn't matter if it's still stable at the top like it has been with the Wilpons. Until the Wilpons leave this organization, I don't believe they officially have. They've said goodbye to their employees. This is happening. But, of course, if this gets stalled, there's a possibility it doesn't. But, to me, the thing that will count, the thing that will matter is that ownership changes because it's a culture. It starts at the very, very top. This has been an ownership group that has refused to invest in the team properly in New York City. Here's somebody that promises to do that. I mean, it's a promise with the kind of wealth that he brings. And the exciting part is you have a free agent class that has a JT Realmuto, has a Trevor Bauer. Go get him. And I'm ready for that for the Mets, who have a closing window. Some would argue a closed window. And it becomes very possible with Steve Cohen. Without Steve Cohen, it's virtually impossible. So who knows? Not to spell out a doomsday here, but this could very well be a doomsday if the mayor gets involved. But again, we won't rush to judgment. It may not happen. We'll leave that there on baseball. Talked about the World Series, talked a little bit of Mets with Steve Cohen, and I'm sure in the future as free agency lurches forward, we'll be able to talk about these two teams and their agendas in free agency, perhaps on the trade market, on the hot stove, because that gets started quickly. But on the other side, we're going to talk NFL, give you a couple headlines, break down Jets, Giants, and otherwise. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our final segment of One-on-One Nightly. I'm Chris Bocci with Tom Quigley, and we'll take you down to 10:30 here, breaking down some NFL headlines. We've talked baseball. There has been plenty to talk after the Dodgers clinched the World Series last night, the World Series victory, that is, in 6 games. But let's shift to football, and we'll start with the New York Football Jets. There aren't a ton of words. I've exhausted the voice box on the one-on-one programming on the NFL Friday. All of it, it's done. I can only sigh at this point. They lose 18-10 to Miami this week, and to the Bills. I'm sorry, and here we are. Adam Gase drops the play calling. That's our headline here as we meet in the middle of the week. That seemed to work a little bit better. They seem to have a little bit something more working, but it doesn't change my perspective on Adam Gase. I don't know about you.
I think it would be, a very unpopular opinion to suggest that Adam Gase deserves to be employed by the New York Jets at the culmination of this season. They've made it clear, the Jets organization has made it clear that they do not want to fire him in the middle of the season. My question is, what would it take for them to fire him? 0-10? Like, will he join Hugh Jackson as being the only coach to achieve an 0-16 season at full length and not get fired? It's, I don't know. It's clearly a coaching blunder at this point. You don't have a lot of talent, but you have a young quarterback that you drafted first round. It's tough to see, the Jets continue to do this with all of their they're early round draft pick quarterbacks. Geno Smith is similar. It's just on the inability to just, grow talent. Despite having these picks like year after year, they just can't get it. They can't get it done. So I think you have to, it's hard to argue at this point that Darnold's still your guy. He's surrounded by ineptitude, but he's also kind of shown not much growth in his 3 years. He has his strokes of genius very infrequently, very infrequently. But sometimes he looks good, and it's a sometimes. It's not like anything that you can draw any sort of consistency on. You can't, mark his growth in any way, shape, or form. At this point, you got to hope that Trevor Lawrence actually goes, actually opts out of playing his final year at Clemson. And now we had a press conference yesterday in which he kind of backtracked on that situation. He definitely had made it clear in the past that he wanted to opt into the draft this year, and now it seems like he might have changed his mind. He's a little inconclusive right now on that. So,
and
there's a few options. There's also Justin Fields at quarterback, who will, if Trevor doesn't go number one, he will. But yeah, it's probably time to look to the draft, because Darnold just isn't getting it done.
And who could blame Trevor Lawrence? Who could blame him? I mean, and it wouldn't be unprecedented. Peyton Manning did it too, staying in college with Lawrence, even have to take a gap year. That may be unprecedented, that part. I'm not exactly sure. But, I mean, yeah, you talk about inability to grow talent. The only ability this team has is to get rid of talent, to throw talent in the trash. That's what they do, is they take good players and they spoil them. They spoil them as if they rot them, is what they do. And so it's hard to identify talent there. It's truly hard to identify if Sam Darnold has talent, because you talk about, he's had flashes. He's had flashes, but he hasn't had any this year. I can't point to any this year. Yeah. Now I'm starting to question if he had flashes, because I was always on that train. I always used to say, yeah. He's shown me that he's got talent. He's got a good arm. But now I don't even know about that. Was I just looking through rose-colored glasses? Because I was always of the mind that, he's young, he's 21, he'll come around. But now I'm wondering, did he ever play good football? I don't know. I'm questioning all of it. I'm remembering his first throw as an NFL quarterback, and that felt like it was a bad omen, which was a throw over the middle of the field, a throw that you don't see good quarterbacks make. And I understand it was his first throw, but it just was a sort of a scary sign of things. And who really knew that it would get that bad? Because when you have a third overall drafted quarterback from a great college program who had massive success in his collegiate years, you're nothing but hopeful. But if you told me where the Jets were 3 years after they drafted him, that they were sitting at 0-7 after last year, they lost only 9 games, so they're very close to getting to that mark already. And by the way, next week they play the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, it's enough. It really, I don't know that more needs to be said, but I think the Trevor Lawrence question is a really good one. Why would you want to play for this team? And that gives the Jets all the more reason to say adios to Adam Gase right now. That this is the time, because if you want to inspire any hope of bringing change to this team, that would be the place to start. And the time would be now, because as you mentioned, how long could you wait? How much worse could it be? This is rock bottom. But it lends itself to an interesting conversation about a division that I find to be very intriguing. It's not a division that anybody's been impressed by. The 5-2 Bills are first place, followed by Miami, New England, and of course, why even mention who's in fourth place, because we've done enough of it. But who wins this division? Who gets this division when it's all over at week 17?
Well, definitely at the beginning of the season, a lot of people hopped onto the Bills bandwagon. Brady's gone. I don't know. We don't know if Cam's good. Everybody was hopping on the Bills train, and I was, maybe it's just me being a stubborn Patriots fan, but I needed to stick with Belichick because he just gets it done. It doesn't matter who's on the field, he gets it done. Even in the season where Brady was injured the entire season, Matt Castle got it. He got it done with Matt Castle, and they didn't win the division that year, so that hurts my point. But the point is that it's just, Belichick just is the guru. And now I've kind of, changed my thinking on that because this season, and it's not his fault necessarily. There's, the Patriots have kind of been hit by the injury bug, even though it's more of a sickness bug here. They lost Cam for 2 weeks. Or for 1 week, and then Cam comes back after COVID. The Patriots aren't even able to practice during the week because there's constant positive tests. They're not allowed in the facility. So that made the Broncos situation, that's a tough game to lose, but that was understandable. Now they go out this past week against 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in, absolutely destroys his former team. It's a very bad look. And I don't know. At this point, with this record, even if Bill is able to turn around, if Cam starts playing well, he played fantastic at the beginning of the season, and his numbers have steadily dropped down. If he's able to switch it back on, it might almost be too late, sitting at 2-5 or 2-4. Yeah, 2-4 at this point. It's hard to catch up to a 5-2 Bills squad that they would have to really, start tanking almost if they were going to lose, that division lead, especially with Josh Allen playing the way he is. So I gotta stick with the Bills. They didn't look great against the Jets at all by any means.
No, they didn't.
But they still won, and it's not really a credit to them. More a credit to the Jets not showing up for the second half. But I think the Bills have a great defense. Josh Allen's really starting to emerge as a top 10 quarterback, arguably top 5 thus far. And I don't see them losing this division lead.
Yeah, no, I hear you on top 5. I mean, I push him out a little further to top 10. And because I think, yeah, if you look at this year's statistics, if you look at the way he's played, he probably is there. But in terms of the true top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, Josh Allen is not there yet. And, is a Bills team that I hesitate to really buy heavily into. And I think that this division is a lot more open than it would appear when you look at 5-2 and then, 2-4 for New England. And of course the 3-3 Dolphins. The Dolphins are sort of the interesting wild card team here because I think they can give a Buffalo team a run for its money, but don't count out the Patriots either. I think you're selling New England a little bit short here because 2-4, it's the worst we've seen them start a year. And yeah, Cam looks terrible, but they find a way. It doesn't matter who's at quarterback. I could be at quarterback. They find a way. So look, Dolphins have the Rams. That's a tough Rams team coming off a good Monday Night Football win. Pats have the Bills. So you're going to see these two teams in action. I think New England upsets Buffalo this week. Remember, not only did Buffalo not look good last week, but the Jets covered the spread against them. The New York Jets covered the spread against the Bills. That says all you need to know because the Jets should be losing by at least 30 if you're a good team, like they probably will against Kansas City, unless Patrick Mahomes. I wouldn't even start Pat Mahomes, quite frankly, this week. Go to backup. But look, I think the Dolphins are in this. I actually like the Tua move. I voiced my support for the Tua move. I think go to him. Go to Tagovailoa. I go to the talented guy. Look toward the future. I get it. Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing well, but turn the page, put a lot of pressure on this guy, set him up at 3-3. He's in a good spot. Got a chance to win this division because it is more open than it might appear. And at the end of the day, he's going to have to start. So why not do it now? Light a fire under him because he's got some shoes to fill, which is rare for these situations. Usually you see a rookie quarterback taking over for a bad team because it's a team that likely drafted at the top in the prior draft. This is a situation where he could actually lead a competitive team in his rookie season very rare and something that I think you have to look out for with the Dolphins. This guy's talented. I think the Dolphins are a threat to win this division. If I'm picking a team right now, because I don't think it's the Bills, and obviously that's the favorite pick, but I like to be a little different. I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins to win this division.
Say my only reservation. Well, I have a few reservations, obviously, about the Dolphins. But my main one is you kind of have to rely on Tua to have a 2001 Brady type season. You know, young guy coming in replacing the older starter, and just coming into a, you know, I think the Patriots had a losing record at the time. Coming in and winning out most of your games, that's going to be a very difficult task for a rookie who's only played in the last couple of minutes of a blowout against the Jets, I think. No, that was not the Jets. No, that wasn't Jets. I don't know.
Which are you talking about?
The past game that the Dolphins won, they just blew out. I forget the team.
Last year?
No, it was this past week. Fitzpatrick started, played the entire game. They put Tua in at the end, and then they named him the starter.
Oh, when they blew out the Jets.
It might have been last week. That was probably last week. Yes, because they had a bye this week.
Yeah, they were in the bye. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. There we go.
I thought you were talking about an old game. I actually
I
missed what you said.
Yeah, that's all right. But yeah, so Tua basically has to be perfect if they want to win this division, and that's just, you know, he's a great quarterback in college. He won a national championship. Came into a game. He basically did the exact same thing. Came into a game, the national championship, and led his losing team to a victory. But, you know, it's hard to expect that out of a rookie in a franchise that, you know, is on its way up probably and has a pretty good coach in Brian Flores, but is still lacking in a lot of ways. And I don't know. I just don't see them really contending to win this division over the Bills or Patriots.
I know that it's a flaming hot take. I understand that, but I like to throw them out there every once in a while. And, you know, I think this also moves nicely into the next conversation, which is Tom Brady, because talk about a New England team that has moved on from the Tom Brady era. And I have a lot of opinions about this. I think we all do. This to me was driven by Bill Belichick more than Tom Brady. For the life of me, would never make sense of why Tom Brady would want to leave that situation. My understanding of this was the classic Bill Belichick model, his philosophy, which is a good one, which is rid yourself of players who are in decline before they decline. And when Tom Brady showed the slightest sign of decline, and we're talking about a year where they still went to the playoffs. Yeah, they didn't go to the AFC Championship for the first time in my life, but still were a formidable playoff team. At that point, he cut ties, and I find that to be kind of crazy and a little bit disrespectful, definitely disloyal to the greatest ever. And here's Tom Brady, you know, doing what I am glad to see Tom Brady have success in Tampa Bay. Tremendous game last week, and I am thrilled, and I know you aren't. You would be the last person for me to talk to. But although maybe you are happy for Tom Brady to have some success, you wish he was doing it in New England. But here's a guy who is a class act. And, you know, when he was a Patriot, of course, I openly admitted what was really a vitriolic hatred, a pretty toxic thing for him at the time. But it really, now that he's in red, it doesn't matter to me. I got no problem. It's always been sort of a sworn villain in the Patriots for me, and in Bill Belichick, frankly, than it is Tom Brady. So I'm happy to see him have success in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I don't really know how I feel about it yet. I mean, thus far, he's clearly won. You know, he's succeeding over Belichick, but I don't think most people had Belichick and the Patriots, you know, doing better record-wise this year than the Bucs. Tom Brady's going down to a situation where he has so many weapons. And he's just gotten another, Antonio Brown. So we'll see how that plays out when he comes back from his suspension. But it's quite the turnaround from, you know, being in New England, having Randy Moss and I guess kind of Wes Welker and Julian Edelman. But really, other than those guys, those are your top three receivers And outside of that, he really had a slim pickings in the receiving core for 20 years in New England. Now he's down in Tampa. How can you not expect him to light up the offense in a way that
yeah, I was to say in the backfield too. I don't think he had much help in the backfield in New England. He never did.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the offensive line has struggled pretty bad. And the, I don't know, it's difficult because I'm a very petty person. It hurt me to watch Mookie Betts win a World Series last night. And at the same time, Tom Brady is one of he's a guy that, has succeeded throughout his career, and he's a winner and he just wins. And, he's going to probably continue to do that. And that's what everybody, it's what seems like what's going on in Tampa. They're a formidable team. They are probably, I wouldn't put them at, Super Bowl contender out of the NFC conference. I wouldn't say they're the favorites, the heavyweights in the NFC, because you have Seattle Seahawks for the Northwest, and Russell Wilson's unhuman. But it's definitely the Bucs are going to have success, and they're going to be a playoff team, and they're going to be fun to watch when they get all their team healthy and back playing. Antonio Brown will be an interesting addition to that, and we'll see Tom Brady basically a little too late, but we'll see him be able, surrounded by players that will carry him a little bit further than they would in New England.
Yeah, and I've seen Belichick do it time and time again, which is to take good players who won him Super Bowls, who contributed to his rings, and say, "See you later. There's the door." Without it really is a testament to his brilliance, because that is a mistake that almost every franchise that I see win championships makes, is that they have a loyalty to players who deliver championships for them. And, they have a loyalty because, you got us a ring, but also the fans, you have a love. If you have a world champion, very hard to cut ties with them if they were integral to that. So, a team that's really bad now, the San Francisco Giants, they won 3 World Series, and they couldn't turn the page to what needed to be the next era. And you've seen that a lot of times. It happens. He never let that happen. And so he followed this model. It may have found its exception in Tom Brady, who is the ultimate untouchable, the ultimate unexpendable. I mean, he's the quarterback, and he is the greatest to ever do it. So what this really does, his success in Tampa Bay, that is, challenges an old argument that I've heard, which is any quarterback could succeed in the New England system. And I know that I alluded to that as being true before, which was to say, don't count the Patriots out with Cam Newton, or even if it's Stidham. But at the same time, it's losing a lot of currency right now. If you think about a team that fundamentally looks different, fundamentally has a different energy, and Tom Brady is playing better, as good a football as I've ever seen him play. I mean, this is not even a slightly diminished product. And my bottom line point is that if he wins a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, that will be the ultimate GOAT move. I mean, to me, it will transcend sport. It won't, it will feel a lot like, but it'll be different, but it'll feel something like LeBron James winning a ring in Cleveland, but it'll have even more, because to get a 7th ring and to do it outside of the system, where everybody always said it was just the system, to be able to do it outside would be, to me, it would be the ultimate last laugh. And you would get a clear verdict on what that theory was all about. The truth is that Tom Brady really is as good as he's been said to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always hated those people who are always like, "Oh, he's just a system QB." I'm like, no, he's the GOAT, and he is the GOAT. And I don't think really after his 6th ring, anybody can have a valid argument in challenging that. But yes, no, a 7th ring with a different team, even MJ couldn't do that. He came back with the Wizards, and they were hapless. He couldn't really do anything with them. If Brady is able to win a championship in Tampa, people will discount it because he had weapons. He had, so many more players around him. But at the end of the day, that's just because he's the GOAT, and it'll take some time. It took MJ time. Now everybody loves MJ, especially after Last Dance comes out.
Yeah.
But it's taken time for those wounds to heal, and I think maybe after the wounds have healed, and Brady's been out of the league for a while, and especially if he is able to do the miraculous and win a championship outside of the Bill Belichick system, and with another team at age 43, it would just cement his legacy as the best that's ever done it and probably will ever do it. So that's what's on the line, and it's going to be tough for me to watch.
Yeah. And it won't be tough for me. I'll be excited to see it because I want it to be known that I don't have any beef with Tom Brady. It's only with the New England Patriots. And I think people are with me who live outside of New England. But yeah, by the way, we probably will get a chance to see something like The Last Dance. Not that the Patriots gave access the way the Bulls did, but this is going to be a chronicled period of NFL history, which is the Patriots' dominance. And of course, the history of the greatest so far to ever play the position and the game. But that's where we'll leave it, on a praise of Tom Brady. Never thought I'd be doing that on WFUV. Bizarre. It actually feels a bit surreal, but that's where we're leaving it. And by the way, for the record, it's Tom Brady of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not Tom Brady of the New England Patriots. Different story. But that's it for our show, One-on-One Nightly with Tom Quigley. I'm Chris Baccio. We thank you for joining us in the late hours on Twitter, on YouTube. We talk about a World Series champion, Los Angeles Dodgers, and we wrap up with some NFL conversation and everything in between. So that's our show. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. We'll see you on Saturday, 11 to 2 on your airwaves, 90.7 FM. This is WFUV Sports One-on-One Nightly.